Hey Javier, so nice to have you out here right after GFA finished up. We're here in Newport Beach. As you can see, it's a beautiful night. We figured because, GFA just finished and it was a great week and you played a wonderful concert and you had such a good experience last year, we'd talk a little bit about GFA. So, my first question is how did you go about starting to prepare for the competition? When did you decide you were going to do it? And then how in your practice and your mental preparation, how did you really make sure you were ready to do it?
Well, I think I first decided to do GFA probably a really long time ago. So years and years ago, maybe 10 years ago or something. And for a while, I thought that if I'm doing competitions, if I win the GFA, then that's it. I'm not doing competitions anymore. So my desire to not do competitions anymore definitely pushed me to win this competition.
Be done with it.
but generally, I prepared just by I decided my repertoire. So even before I played the pieces, sometimes I was deciding the music that I was going to play. So probably 1 year in advance, they gave the set piece, and I started working on it. And then I decided my repertoire, and then I went to work. And usually, how I was working was usually pretty seriously, but I tried to get a little bit of everything. Some metronome practice, some practice which is completely musical and with breathing, some practice which is just by score. And the idea is to have a good balance of everything, so that nothing comes out too focused.
So how do you go about selecting a piece? Like you found that beautiful Sergio Assad piece, and how do you go about selecting a piece that is good for a competition but isn't something everybody plays,
Mm.
or that the judges are going to be sick of hearing, and it's something that you really love because that's important about a competition. Is that
Right, yeah, that's true. I mean, for me, I guess it would first be just to have good taste. But then, of course, the not playing something that everybody is playing is really important. Because if you're playing something that everybody's playing, then you're already in a comparative setting. And this is what you want to avoid in music in general. You need to be an individual. You need to be an artist. There's no second place. There's just number one. So, yeah, I was just doing that. Sorry, I forgot your
listening
question.
a lot and
Yeah,
like
listening a lot. Yeah,
finding new music and
yeah, exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
So when you sat down to like play the guitar, was there any sort of preparation that was different from what how you normally prepare, or
Yeah, because usually if I'm practicing for a competition, I'm usually making sure that it's technically proper,
mm,
because it's something that's important in competitions, because you compare like, he missed more notes than he did, and
mm,
and this is sort of on a basic level.
yeah,
And I mean, it goes back to playing pieces that you really care about, because if you're playing pieces of music that you really care about, then these kind of things don't matter as much.
right,
You can do a more individual interpretation. And also for the music that I was choosing, it was generally I was trying to choose music that would make sense to also a more mature audience, because in general the difference between the competitors and the jury is that the jury tends to be more mature than the competitors as far as musical taste goes and everything, and less naive.
true,
So I was playing music that was more played in their generation, in fact, and less played in our generation. These had choices to do with the four pieces by Frank Martin and the Elegy by Alan Rawsthorne, which are modern pieces that are great masterpieces, but are generally not played today, but were quite popular, in the 70s and 80s,
right,
and which this tends to be the generation of the jury members that come by.
sure, yeah. Talking a little bit about making sure things are really technically secure. How do you go about doing that on such like a big stage, like knowing that you can really pull something off technically?
Mm.
What advice do you have for students
Well, my
achieving that?
advice would be to actually play the pieces many, many times, because the problem is that if we isolate passages, we can get very good at doing just something directly, but to play a whole piece with enough stamina and with enough energy all the way throughout is another thing. So to practice playing the piece, not stopping, is really important for this, because once we get on stage, problems can happen. So you need some reliability for yourself that you're going to continue no matter what.
Right.
And this would be, besides that, there's not much I can say besides calming yourself beforehand and trying to breathe deeply.
Right.
But that's pretty much it.
In those terms, how do you approach a competition from a mental standpoint? Like, how do
Mm.
you go out on stage and not freak out because every note has to be perfect and
Yeah,
every musical thing has to come across? How do you
right.
approach that mentally?
Me generally, I mean, I try to make sure that the notes are perfect beforehand. This is something like a technical, analytical mind, which is important to have when you're practicing. But when you're on stage, you have to have something of a single-minded approach where you're not worried about what just happened or what's going to happen, and you're just sort of in the moment. So I would say that how to prepare for this. I would say that the competitions, generally, I need a more emotional approach than when I'm practicing for a competition. So I try to give all my energy on that one moment. In fact, I can practice with less energy. I can practice piano beforehand not to tire myself out. But the important thing is to give all my energy when I get to the competition. And this has to do with an emotional aspect, because the jury, at the same time, while these kind of technical mistakes are easily comparable to each competitor, if you're too focused and you lack the emotional side, then you lose a lot, and I think it's very difficult to win a competition unless you show that you have some artistic expression to the jury.
Cool.
Yeah. So I usually try to forget about the technical side and just focus on the emotional side, at least when I'm actually playing.
Yeah. So now you're done with
Yeah.
competitions, I hear.
Yeah.
You're decided that you finished. You don't think you'll even do any of the larger competitions?
No, I mean, you can take my word for it. I'm not going to do competitions anymore.
Interesting.
Because for me to improve as an artist right now, I need to, like I said, I can't compare myself to others. And usually in competitions, you always have to compare yourself to others, even if you're playing a new program. So to improve myself artistically, I really feel that I have to avoid these kind of situations. And I've been doing competitions for a long time. I was doing youth competitions before that, and so probably I've been doing competitions for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And to me, that's enough.
Yeah.
More than enough.
One lifetime.
Yeah. Retirement has started.
Yeah. So now that you're done with competitions, what is your approach to picking music for a concert setting as opposed to competition?
Well, with a concert setting, I can generally play what I want, which is a great thing. Because for a competition, you have to make choices with time limits, and also to make contrasting pieces which are not too short, too long, but also pieces that you particularly know you can play well. Because if there's something you know you don't play as well as the others, you should just not play it in a competition because it will hurt you. But then playing for a concert, the fact that I can play whatever music I want, I can structure the program differently. It's a whole hour slot. I can do something that I feel is really myself and original and artistic. Whereas the competition, it's more of a game of strategy.
Right.
And a very different thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Where do you kind of see yourself going in your career from here now that you're, moving on and doing lots of concerts? Do you see yourself mostly playing music, doing a lot of teaching or commissioning works?
Yeah, I mean, I want to get into teaching. That is definitely something I want to do, but my main goal in life has always been to do concerts, and this is what I truly love to do because I really feel some value from what I get from it.
Right.
And I mean, teaching, of course, I want to do, and I think that you can see me in the future commissioning some new music. This is also something I'm very interested in. But the side I'm not so interested in is interpretation of overly played works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's been done enough, and there's not so much value in doing something that's, again, the same thing.
Right. So working with composers like Jeremy Collins.
Yeah, exactly.
These kind of guys.
Yeah.
That's great.
Do some new works.
Well,
Which is also a duty as a performer. We can interpret old works, but at the same time, to keep music going with new music is, I consider, a duty rather than a preference.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing what you come up with in the
Thanks,
next few
Chris.
years and seeing you on concert next year. It's good to see you, man.
Great to see you too.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.